gentlemen, welcome to Ariel Helwani's MMA Show.
Back in your life on this Monday, September 24, 2018. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani. Welcome back to the program, and what a great day we have planned for all of you. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. Holy smokes. So much has happened since we last spoke. John Jones is back. Conor and Khabib finally faced off. There's main events happening all over the place. Main events getting signed. Joanna Valentina. Remember that one? Flyweight title, Toronto. Sao Paulo happened. Eric Anders loses to Thiago Santos. Bellator had a great event on Friday. We're on the road to the biggest event, arguably, in Bellator history. We're on the road to UFC 229. There is so much going on. We have a jam-packed show for all of you. I can't wait for today's show. I love today's lineup. It's going to be a lot of fun. Please, trust me on this one. It's going to be a lot of fun. As always, we appreciate everyone who's tuning in live on Twitter. live.twitter.com/ESPN is where you can watch the program live after the fact. You can get it on iTunes, Stitcher, the ESPN app, also on YouTube. All those places and more. You know the drill by now. Before we move along with the program, at the very top, just wanted to say that I wanted to dedicate today's program to the memory of both Norifumi Kid Yamamoto, who passed away on Monday, one of the greatest of all time, a Japanese legend who unfortunately succumbed to stomach cancer in his prime, arguably one of the pound-for-pound best. And when he was at the top of his game, mid-ish, early 2000s, there was no one better. And, of course, there was talk of him fighting Uriah Faber. That dream matchup, it never came to fruition. Came to the UFC, but it was a little bit past his prime. Unfortunately, at, I believe, 41, he passed away. He had stomach cancer, spoke to a couple people who were with him towards the end, and it was just devastating. So wanted to dedicate this to the memory of the great Kid Yamamoto, and also wanted to dedicate today's program to the memory of Glenn Robinson, the founder of the Black Zillions, who also passed away tragically late last week due to a heart attack. He was 50 years young, always was great to the media, always very accessible, somewhat polarizing in the sport, brought together a team of free agents, if you will, paid them a lot of money. In the end, he was a little less involved in the world of MMA, but still had some guys that he was representing. Spoke to him recently about Tyrone Claxton over in Bellator, was very high on him. Of course, represented the likes of Rashad Evans and Anthony Johnson and Tyrone Spong, and at one point, Eddie Alvarez. He was a major player in this sport, and unfortunately he passed away as well. We'll talk to Rashad Evans actually about him and his memory and his legacy later in the program. So just wanted to, unfortunately, have to do that at the top of the show, but wanted to dedicate today's program to both of their legacies and memories as well. All right, so what is happening on today's program? Well, like I said, we have a lot to discuss. We have a lot of people to talk to, so let me run down today's lineup. And then we shall get to our first guest of the day, who I am oh so excited to talk to. I haven't talked to this man in quite some time. This is very nice. 3:30, we're going to be joined in studio by the great Kayla Harrison. It was reported by our own Brett Okamoto on Wednesday, I do believe, of ESPN.com, that she is re-signing with PFL. She's going to be a part of a 155-pound women's tournament next year. 155, not 145, 155. She's going to be in studio. PFL has their first ever playoff on October 5th, and she'll talk a little bit about that. Being involved in the tournament next year, her first two pro fights. Remember, I had her on the old program in studio. She was a phenomenal interview. I'm looking forward to talking to her. Eric Anders will stop by at 3:20, talk to him about the main event and the uncomfortable scene at the end of that fight, end of the third round. Can't walk, collapses, seemed to be in really rough shape. And I just want to know how he's feeling. Spoke to him a bit on text, taking the fight on 6 days' notice. You'll recall we spoke to him at the top of last week's show, and he was eager to fight, negotiated a little bit, but seemed down to take the fight. It seemed maybe that the very, very, very short, if at all, training camp got him. Thiago Santos is a super tough fighter who's a very hard puncher, and fought very well in that fight. It was a fight between two middleweights fighting at light heavyweight, and just the scene at the end of him collapsing a couple times, tough to watch, so wanted to check in with him. At 3:05, we'll talk to Miesha Tate. She has a bit of news to share with all of us. Haven't talked to her since she became a mother. How beautiful is that? At 2:50, I am plus to say that the great Tony McGregor, the father of one Conor McGregor, will be stopping by. What a legend Tones is, and he is all over the news in Ireland these days. He had a viral video last month of him complaining about the dart system giving him too much coinage because he wears a slim fit, custom-made Hugo Boss suit, and that has turned into a sponsorship for Mr. McGregor. I love talking to him. He'll stop by at 2:50. 2:35, we'll talk to Rashad Evans about Glenn Robinson. As I mentioned, 2:20, we'll talk to Rory McDonald, who meets Gegard Mousasi on Saturday in the biggest fight in Bellator history, the middleweight title. Talk to him at 2:20. Francis Ngannou will stop by. There's always stuff to talk about with Francis Ngannou. Of course, he returns to action on November 24th against Curtis Blades to main event that show in China. And this is a rematch, of course, of a fight that happened several years ago. Alexander Gustafsson will stop by at 1:50, talk about his desire to fight John Jones, I presume. And we'll also talk about UFC 230 and the search for that main event. Malky Kawa at 125, talk about John Jones, a little Tyron Woodley action, all that and then some. But first, let us go to the phone lines and talk to one of my favorite people in this business. I miss working with this man oh so dearly. He is the host of the brand new Eurobash podcast over at MMAfighting.com, my former teammate there. In my opinion, the best journalist in Europe, the best journalist as far as Irish MMA is concerned, the number one guy who knows all things Conor McGregor, all things Irish MMA, all things Euro MMA, the guru, if you will, the incomparable Peter, a.k.a. Pete Carroll, joins us right now. Top of the show. How about this? Pete, how are you?
How's tricks, Ariel? Very happy to be on. How are you, buddy?
What's the crack? Long time no speak. This is great. Worlds colliding. We're back for one day.
I know. I know. What an honor it is. How's tricks with you? You doing well, yeah?
Everything's okay. I don't know if you heard, but I moved. I have a new home now, but I still love you and everyone over at MMA Fighting. I miss you guys dearly. Miss working with you all. Miss having you at my disposal as a teammate and, of course, as a guru for all things Irish and Euro MMA. And that's where I want to start. There's no time to waste. There's a big fight. I don't know if you heard this, but there's a big fight coming up on October 6th involving Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor for the UFC lightweight title. And it has been a quiet buildup up until last Thursday. Press conference in New York. It was heated. There was a lot that happened. Let me ask you, as we discuss on this Monday about this fight that is, 12 days away now, describe to me the buzz, the interest, the hype in Ireland for the return of Conor McGregor, his first MMA fight in almost 2 years, compared to some of the other big fights that he's been a part of over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very fractured reaction. I mean, I think for the most part, the MMA fan base absolutely expected Conor to come out and, give us that big spectacle and sell the fight. But as usual, like the national media, kind of pointed at it being fakery, that it's over the top, it isn't real, it's manufactured. I personally, my phone went crazy, like all the way through it. And this is the first time I personally had like a big negative reaction to it. Not me, but people getting onto me and kind of saying, "Oh, this is awful," this is embarrassing and stuff like that. So, I mean, that is the first time I've really had that at a press conference, like people actually reaching out to me. But I think expect the general sense is, that the Irish people might not have the same skin in the game that they had for that run back in Mendes and Aldo. Like that's how like everybody in Ireland was going to those fights. And to be honest, I haven't met one person who's going to this fight in Ireland, apart from people who are working at it and people who are on the Team McGregor, of course. I do still think everybody's interested. You can tell that from the reaction. I mean, everybody's talking about it. But I just don't feel like it has the same national urgency that it had on that initial run towards, getting his first UFC titles.
Why do you think that is?
It's a lot of different things. Like, I mean, I can only speculate, really. Like, I think the silence has a lot to do with it. The fact that we haven't heard much from him. In the past, Conor's had such big calls to action. And he really felt like he was, like, the symbol of Irishness. Like, people were holding him up as like nearly like a mythological creature. You know what I mean? Like, this guy is like something from the past. He is the Irish identity, and that's something Conor didn't ask for. That was something that the people put on him. Every time when he bet Mendes and everybody was over there, it felt like a huge moment. People used to talk about that like and still do, like that was our Italian 90s. Basically what that was, every generation of Irish seems to have one sporting moment that they consider the greatest moment of their generation. And I think for the people who are there and the people who are watching and the people who are engaged, that run that Conor had with Aldo and Mendes was that. So it's an incredibly hard thing to uphold, and I imagine it's an awful lot of pressure for someone like Conor. And that's kind of faded away. Like we see people basically, even when he won those titles against Mendes and Aldo, the national press were kind of saying, well, this sport is a joke, and this guy, he's just a loudmouth. And we saw so many people rushing to defend him then, to say, hang on, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what this sport is. You don't understand what this man has done. And basically, since then, obviously in the last year, there's been some big public showings, like controversial stuff, starting in Dansk, and then it went to the Bellator in Dublin, where he scaled the fence and went into the cage, and then of course it all comes to a head in Brooklyn with the bus incident. And all the people who had been saying those things about Conor, it made it very hard to defend Conor for the people who are so die-hard from him, I think. And as much as everybody's turning on, they're definitely going to watch this fight. More than ever, I think everybody's going to watch this fight because he's probably more polarizing than ever. I just don't feel like they have the same, importance as a national, for Ireland as those two did. And I think that would be very hard to do because that was like nothing I or many sports journalists had ever seen before.
So I saw a lot of people after, and that's great insight. Thank you for that. I saw a lot of people afterwards say, it seemed like he was trying too hard. He was trying to get under Khabib's skin. He was too colorful. He was out of control, et cetera, et cetera. But you think back to the press conference before 205 when he's wearing the coat. I mean, he was just as colorful then. He's been colorful before. I didn't really see a difference. Yes, this time, he was taking an opportunity here and there to plug the whiskey, but I didn't see much of a difference in the Conor McGregor on stage last Thursday than some of the other Conor McGregors we've seen in the past. Maybe he was trying to overcompensate a little bit for the fact that there was no audience there, and I think that was a mistake on the UFC's part. Security reasons, they probably wanted to just be safe, and I get it. But do you feel like this was a different Conor on the stage than the one we've seen in the past?
No, I agree with you. This is what I anticipated, and the reactions were, it was quite strange to have people just randomly reaching out to me like that. But that still shows that there is a massive emotional investment here, and that is really all that matters in the fight game. Like, if you are moved one way or the other, and you move to watch this fight in any way, shape, or form, he's winning. That's what he wanted to do there, and that's exactly what he did. I don't know if it's a case of, is it harder for Joe Public to love a wealthy man rather than a guy that's trying to climb the ladder and a guy that's trying to pursue these things? It could be something to do with that, you know what I mean? Like when I say, this is the reaction, he definitely still has a massive, a die-hard fan base. I saw guys on Facebook, friends, threatening to beat each other up over who they thought was going to win the fight about 10 minutes after that press conference ended. So, I mean, there's still definitely that. But it just doesn't feel like it's the same as in across the board, you know what I mean? I think over 10,000 people went to that Mendes and Aldo fight. He is a global commodity now. He's a global icon. And maybe, the silence, the fact that usually when he speaks, he's speaking about Ireland. We've only got to see him at this press conference. He usually has those big calls to action. And maybe the more we see him as this fight goes on, we're going to have that. Maybe people will have that sense of nationality associated with Conor as it pushes towards the fight, because that's the thing. The more we see of him, the more interest there always is going to be. And as you said, there has been pretty much a blanket silence from the camp ahead of this fight.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think the camp has been so quiet?
I guess it's to do with the issues stemming from the bus incident. You know what I mean? It seems to be deeper than we can all fathom. Especially the one thing about the press conference that was very interesting to me was Conor bringing up, Chechen-Dagestani relations.
Yeah.
That shows that this guy is very much preparing. He prepared for that moment. And that's really the first indication that we have of him being really vested in this fight, which I think is a good sign, Whether people liked what he was saying or not, it did show us that he is committed to this fight 100%.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to see how there's been so few interviews from not just Conor and Khabib. That was the first time essentially that they've talked a couple of TMZ spots here and there. My guy Adam Glynn catching them on the street, but for the most part, not much. In fact, they didn't do any interviews after the press conference as well. They both bolted. And you bring up to me what was the most interesting part of that press conference, and it was Conor's comments about Vladimir Putin, about Ramzan Kadyrov, about Khabib's manager, Ali Abdelaziz. This man does his research unlike any other. He doesn't just show up to a press conference sitting back and waiting for the media to ask him questions. He comes prepared with information and research, and he does that better than anyone. I remember last year, leading up to the Floyd Mayweather fight, he's walking around with a Golden State Warriors jersey, number 23, CJ Watson, and no one understood really what he was doing with that jersey. Draymond Green thought that it was his jersey. In fact, It was connected to Floyd's past with his former partner, et cetera, et cetera. We spoke about that at length. He just goes to a whole other level. Do you feel at any point in the comments pertaining to that stuff, the political stuff, Dagestan, Chechnya, that he crossed the line? Were you surprised that he went there?
No, it wasn't, because he had kind of hinted at this on Instagram already. If you remember, he kind of pointed towards one of Khabib's teammates that was a Chechen, and he was kind of saying, well, a Chechen's helping a Dagestani that was, in a Dagestani-led attack, I believe it was. So I did feel like that was going to feature along the ways. But I mean, you mentioned earlier about it being a bad idea for the UFC to have fans there. Like, I'm just saying, for instance, if Khabib had turned around to Conor and said, oh, well, the English ran the Irish off the hills of Galway or something, I think the place would have exploded. I don't know what would have happened then. Honestly, I think that could have been a crazy scene if that was full of Irish people like we've seen before. And we know how Conor captivates them. Like, he nearly, he's like the Pied Piper of this sport over here, and he has such a big reaction. So, I think that could have went sour. But, of course, it wasn't Khabib who was saying those things. But at the same time, this is what Conor does that nobody else does. He's constantly rewarded for these kind of things. So why would Conor do anything else? We're 6 months ago, Dana White's telling us that this man committed the most disgusting act in UFC history, and now they're using it as the main promotion for the fight.
Yeah.
He's constantly being rewarded for this, and he's constantly gaining more wealth off this. So, what do you want the guy to do? You can't, you're sending him mixed messages, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. He has carte blanche. Did you see the moment Dana White posted this on his Instagram? His social media was picked up in a few places, but I didn't see many people bring it up. And I think the fact that he said it, and I think the fact that it wasn't a big story, tells us everything that we need to know about UFC belts in 2018. Right before they're about to square off, Dana turns to someone off to the side and says, "Get Conor's belts. Get Conor's belts, the two belts that you stripped him of, the featherweight and lightweight title. Get Conor's belts to square off." And that's
quite animated.
Yeah, that's what sparked the whole Ali thing. But get Conor's belts. It's one thing for Conor to show up saying, "I'm going to bring my belts." It's one thing for Colby Covington. But if the president of the UFC is actually summoning someone to get those belts, it just tells you that the whole thing was a bit of a sham. And then the fact that this wasn't really picked up and made into a story, they publicized the fact that they were stripping him, tells you how fans feel about these belts. Get Conor's belts. If I'm Khabib, if I'm Max Holloway, I'm fired up. I'm livid over this, no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, this is constantly the way they do things. Conor is an anomaly. He is a global icon now. This is what I keep. He is global. He's a global commodity, far more than an Irish commodity now. He is so important to them. And you can tell that by the way they've bent over backwards to get this new contract, which basically just means he's going to have the proper 12 logo on the canvas. It feels like they'll do anything for him. And it was only when he came back. And Sean Sheehan of Severe MMA made a great point. He said, it feels like MMA's been on a hiatus. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like, oh, we're back again. It felt like everybody in Ireland stopped watching MMA the day Conor bet Eddie Alvarez, and now they're all back. So they're basing their complete understanding, for the vast majority of people in Ireland, are basing their complete understanding of MMA off Conor McGregor press conferences, what Conor does outside the cage, and when Conor fights. You know what I mean? That is all they have. But, this is the thing. we only have to look at like public perception. Like it's a game of what have you done lately. Look at Tiger Woods last night. You know what I mean? Conor comes out and he beats Khabib. He's going to be like a mythological creature again in Ireland. He's going to be like Sean McCool or Clu Cullins come back again. He can't be touched. Like, that's just the way it works. And that's the way it will work if he does manage to get that win. I really do think that. And I think Dane is the same. I think he's an all.
Conor's accent, was it a little different this time around? And I understand that he was actually using some sort of like Dublin slang. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, yeah, you see, it's funny. Like, I mean, the guy can't win. People used to kind of slag the way that he wasn't talking like he should talk as a Dublin man. You know, because he was enunciating words, he was pronouncing things, he was very clear with his speech, he dictated things very well. And like that all made perfect sense in terms of a guy that, you know, probably had massive endorsements, you know, coming his way. It makes it a lot easier when you don't talk like me, you know. But he was far more Dublin there, absolutely. It's kind of like even people in Dublin, like, I mean, it would be like the working class people that speak like that a lot more. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be so maybe that triggered a few people as well.
But what about the sayings?
The Irish. Oh yeah, the saying is funny, right? Because I went into town for a bit of socialising on Friday, and everybody just shouted at each other in the streets. Like everyone's going, "Oh, well, Gallagher, Dougherty, and Larry's air on bus." Like, you know, that was the big takeaway from that event. Like, that's, can I go to the toilet, please, on the bus? But every child that goes to primary school in Ireland has to learn that. You have to ask to go to the bathroom in Irish. For some reason, it was always the way it was. But since I was like 5 years old in school, you had to do it. So, I mean, that. But look, in fairness to Conor, he was actually like he could speak fluent Irish at one point. I can remember just at the the World Tour leg of the Aldo fight in March 2015 in Ireland. He kind of said, "Well, look, I've forgotten it now. It's not like he's been working that muscle a lot." So I guess that was the first thing that came to his head when he was challenged about not knowing his national language.
How's his whiskey doing there? Proper 12. Is it that big of a deal?
Man, it is crazy.
Really?
I'm not like, it is insane. It's viral. Like, I mean, everybody's talking about it.
Wow.
You know, like that seems to be the big takeaway from that press conference. I think that was another thing that didn't go well with the mainstream media over here. They just saw it as a press conference to sell his whiskey rather than sell his fight for the most part, I think. But yeah, unbelievable. It's everywhere. I said on Twitter, basically, when we had a big storm there earlier in the year, and basically pictures of bread just started going viral because someone got it into their head that there would be a shortage of bread and water. So everybody's going out and tweeting their pictures of bread and water. This is all over the country. And the only thing that I've seen close to this is Conor's proper 12 since then. So, I mean, that's got off to a fantastic start, I'd imagine.
Yeah, his timing of coming out with that on the Monday, using the press conference to promote it, and then, of course, you know, having it a part of this fight was just absolutely brilliant. Do you feel comfortable with the question of who do you think is going to win this fight? Are you comfortable giving us a prediction?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, like, straight off the bat, I think the best version of Conor McGregor beats the best version of Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's where I'll start with this. But the question is the same Conor McGregor that fought Eddie Alvarez 2 years ago, is he going to show up in Las Vegas? And that's the question. And I think how big of a celebrity Conor is taking away from people looking at this fight in terms of the contest in Ireland anyway. You know, they think when Conor fights, he wins, basically. You know, even though the Diaz thing happened, he came back and he won that. But there's a few red flags for me. Like he's been on the sidelines for 2 years. Like, we generally don't see guys coming back and performing at their best after such a gap. We've also had, you know, 3 big controversial incidents with Conor. Like, you know, starting in Dansk, then it went to the Bellator incident scaling the fence, and then obviously the bus incident. In those moments, Conor didn't look like a guy who was really committed to the fight game at them moments, you know what I mean? As well as that, he just launched a massive business venture. Like, a couple of weeks before the fight, that would suggest to me that he would have to take time out of his training schedule to get something like this off the ground. You know what I mean? And then, this is something that nobody's thought about. He was having a few drinks on Thursday at the press conference. Why is not that's not what you should be doing when you're preparing for a fight.
Are you picking Khabib Nurmagomedov? Is that what's happening here?
I'm leaning towards Khabib, yeah.
Wow.
I gotta say, but I do I'm not shocked. I don't think it's a definite. I think Conor can absolutely do it. If the best version of Conor shows up, he can do it. But we haven't heard anything from him. Usually, ahead of his fights, they're talking to his camp. They're telling you. You feel like you've got a good feel for it. It's very, it's silent. It's hard to know what's going on there. And look, he is the guy that will, put egg all over my face. He is the guy that does that. He's proved people wrong. He's made a whole career out of proving people wrong. So he absolutely could. I think it's way closer than most people are talking about. You know what I mean? That's the one fear I have. And I think his silence hasn't helped him in that, because usually when he speaks, he has this incredible power to make people believe. Incredible. I have never seen a man who can make people believe the way he does. And that's how he managed to kind of energize the whole nation in this time of recession. He was a guy going out, doing what he wanted to do, scaling to the top of a sport that nobody had ever heard of, and then everybody suddenly had an opinion of over here. That's what he can do, and that's what I think the worst thing about the silence was. We don't really know where he's at. You know what I mean? So at the moment, I'm leaning towards Khabib. I've done 4 of these shows talking about Conor and Khabib and picking, and I think I've done the day he released that 30-second clip of him training. That's showing me, to some extent, more than anything so far, oh, there he is training. He looks like the old guy. And that day I was going holy shit, it's Conor. It's the same guy. And I think I did a show that day and I picked Conor. That's how he can turn the public opinion. So, I'm leaning towards Khabib at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think it's a way closer fight. And I think, to be honest, when we see more of the camp in the lead up to the fight on that fight week, I could change my mind again.
Yeah.
Just based on what they're saying and what they're saying. But at the moment, it's there are a few red flags, but that's how I'm feeling. Yeah. Is that crazy, or is that just
you know what?
The way I've listed
that just proves, if anyone ever had any doubt, that just proves how unbiased you are. People would think, oh, he's Irish, he's going to lean towards Conor. That's why we love you, PT. Phenomenal insight, great stuff. Check out the Eurobash podcast. Every Tuesday comes out on MMAfighting.com. Check out his work. My colleagues work over there as well. They do a phenomenal job. Love those guys, and I love you as well, PT. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate the insight, and enjoy the fight on October 6th.
Thank you, Bull. Great to speak to you always.